right, let's get this party started. It's Thursday morning, CliffCentral.com, and it's me and Phumi and you this morning, and the voting platform a little bit later on. We're also going to intro you to someone new at CliffCentral.com, and we'll get to that in just a moment or two. But I hope your Thursday's off to a perfect start. How are you, Phums?
Good.
Yeah, you're full of the
perfect.
You were bouncing around just now. You're very energetic for this time of the day. I'm very impressed. I don't know how you do that. What's going on? Is there a secret?
There's no secret. There's just like, this is what you do. This is you get up and you show up.
Nah, I've said I've said it before. I've learned to be a morning person, but it's not in me. It's not my favorite time of the day. I've got used to it. I know now it's part of my life, and I wouldn't want it any other way, but I'm not that morning person. Like, I've never woken up in the morning, never, and gone, oh, yay, it's so good to be up so early, ever. I'm one of those people, if you left me alone, I would sleep until 10.
Just show up. Just
no.
When you're in it, then you have to be in it.
Isn't that the first rule of, what is it, success or leadership or one of those things, is showing up? Just got to get up and get going.
I think that thing, I think that rule kind of changes every year, and depending on who's famous and who's in vogue and whatever. Wasn't there like a guy just a couple of years ago who was all about, you gotta make your bed?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
get up and make your bed. I was like,
I have not. I got out of bed, and I'll sort that out later.
I hate making the bed. I hate making the bed. It's actually one of the things that's and eating vegetables that really became a part of my life when I became a mom.
Michael says, und ein lieber guten Morgen am Phumi.
Guten Morgen. It is a good morning.
You know, next to my desk in my office, I've got those pictures that you and I took in those photo booths.
On the fridge.
When we were in Berlin, because Phumi and I went to Berlin together. And trust me, if you want to travel with anybody to Berlin, take Phumi, because she's fluent in German. And she also knows things. Like, she knows a huge amount about that place. And you need someone sometimes when you go to places like that to kind of show you around. Even though I'd been before, the year before, in fact, I'd been on a different trip, but having you there with us was very helpful. Greg and I went with you, and we all benefited enormously.
Oh, I love traveling. So when I'm going to travel, I do also read up about the place and find the quirky things, and then get on the apps. There's so many apps that have all of these little, and then discover. I'd never been to Berlin, and it was totally one of my favorite cities.
Turn left here, and then turn right, and you see that, and that's what happened there, and it was all very, very cool. You taught me things about the place that I had no idea were going on.
I have those crazy pictures on my fridge, actually.
All right, so a couple of people. Chris says he's not a morning person, but he wakes up early for the show. Well, that's awesome.
We love you, Chris.
There we go. And Kawe says, I cannot function without making my bed.
Why?
Well, that's, you know what? Some people, order as opposed to chaos. Like, I'm a bit like that, but I don't do it first thing, because this show is the priority. And then after that, I can sort out and tidy up my life and, do a little bit of exercise and all that shit. But here, Michael says, not in Switzerland, fucking cold here. Been 10 years, still can't wake up early. Not Canada cold, but cold. That's Michael. No. Switzerland. Yeah, we love visiting places like that because it's so different to here. So I love Switzerland because you've got those beautiful mountains. Everything is pünktlich und tüchtig und dichtig und genau. And it all is it's postcard beautiful. And obviously, if you ski, which is something that both Bolelo and I like to do, then Switzerland is like paradise. But to live there, no, don't think so.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I saw my Facebook reminded me that 7 years ago, in January 7 years ago, I went to Moscow and to St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Yay! It was cold, 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 cold. I mean, that is the kind of cold that I have had
Mm-mm,
never, like the -13s and
mm-mm,
yeah,
mm-mm.
and dark. But also, I suppose that is also why we travel, right? To have new experiences. That's where I learned that I am definitely a sunrise person. It's
Oh yeah.
difficult for me after a week of being in a place that has like the sun rises at like 9 or something ridiculous
Oof.
like that, and then sets at 4.
Mhm.
It starts getting, my whole world starts getting a little bit like oppressive. I need sunshine. So more
Well,
than just kind of morning and wake up, but just
I know,
sunshine.
I know exactly what you mean. It also feels to me when I'm in certain countries that the sky is lower. You know,
Mm.
we tend to think, and it's the hardest thing to explain to someone who's never traveled to, either America or Europe or Russia or any of these particular countries that they all have the same sort of sky. Here, it feels like our sky is just double as high. Does that make sense?
And the sun is just, especially after that afternoon like thunder shower, it's like
Mm,
just crisp.
mm,
It's just
got
crisp.
to.
But it's, yeah.
Well, here's something nice to think about. Guess what the temperature is in Antarctica at the moment? -36. There's something to consider. So if you're worried about being hot or cold today, -36 in Antarctica. Very nice. By the way, we're going to speak to a guy who is planning a trip to Antarctica tomorrow, and he's quite well known to audiences all over South Africa. So stick around for that. One of the reasons I'm going to
Mm.
Antarctica. We've got the burning platform a little later on with Koketso Resane and Chris Yelland. We're going to talk a little bit about Eskom, and we're also going to be talking about a bunch of things in current affairs. Sona, isn't the Sona today?
Today,
Mm.
coming straight out of Cape Town,
Hmm.
uh, out of the city hall
Yeah, we got to
today.
check that out. Some people, I see these news organizations, great expectations ahead of Sona 2022. Who's got who in the world's got great expectations? But we'll get to that later with our guests on the burning platform. I want to talk to you about Wordle, Pums, because I was
Oh,
introduced to Wordle by Rena on Rena's my business partner. Long time now we've been working together, and she said to me, "You've got to play this game called Wordle," which I've started doing. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it. I haven't done. I kind of show you this, but I haven't done today's. But
no, yeah.
so I did Sunday. I skipped Monday. I did Tuesday, and then I didn't do yesterday's. So I've got to do today's. But Wordle's basically, for those people who don't know what it is, it's taken the world by storm. It's so popular. It's gone viral. Like everyone in the world is trying this at some point, and it's become so popular that the New York Times actually bought it from the guy who developed it for like hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions.
Six
Even.
figures. Six
Is it
figures.
6 figures?
That's what they said.
Incredible.
Six
And
figures.
it's basically this game where you have to guess a 5-letter word, and you get 6 times to guess it. So there are 24 letters in the alphabet. You have to guess what the word might be. If you get any of them right, it highlights it as green. And then you've got that letter, and it'll also show you where in the word the letter's situated if you get it right. But you've got
So
six.
if it's green, you've got it the correct letter in the correct place.
Mhm.
If it's orange or something, it is
Right,
the correct, that letter is in the word, but it's in the incorrect place. And then if
right.
it's gray, that letter doesn't exist. Listen.
So yeah, you have to concentrate when you're doing this, though. You can't just you can't do it while you're doing other things. You have to sit down and really focus, because if you don't focus, it it gets very frustrating, because you like on when it was Tuesday's one, it took me like 5 times to get it right, and it's very annoying if you're not getting it. If you're not hitting those notes, you're not hitting those letters in the right place. It's very annoying.
Do you have okay, two things about Wordle. And
Mhm.
yesterday's Wordle, and I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone because every day there's a new word.
Yeah, correct.
So if you didn't do yesterday's word, I'm not spoiling it for you. Yesterday's word was actually quite annoying because it's English.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows, English works in a particular way. And then there's Americanese,
No.
which works in a different way from English. It's not the real thing. And yesterday's word was an Americanese spelling of
Well,
an English word, which
you can't.
I
You
was
can't
so
go back.
mad.
So you can't go back and do yesterday's one. So you can tell us what it was, because this is going to annoy the hell out of me now.
Oh,
Go on.
it did make me a little bit mad. So yesterday's word was humor, but the American spelling, because humor has 6 letters in English.
Uh-huh.
And because Americans have to be different, they
Yeah.
spell it with
Humor.
5 letters. Humor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that made me a little bit mad yesterday. Made me.
Well, apparently Hermine says there is a Wordle archive if you want to play more than one a day. Oh, okay.
Oh yes, there is. Because I only started playing Wordle, I think, in the second week of January, and
Yeah,
it's been around since October. I think the guy invented it, and his name is Wardle, by the way,
no way.
Wardle. Yes,
Really?
his last name is Waddle.
Incredible. I love that.
In October. So it kind of started in October, November last year. But yesterday's word made me so mad. And I'm just like,
So,
I hope the New York Times isn't gonna F this up by giving us more American words. Because I play quite a lot of games, like word games on the New York Times sites. If you're a subscriber to the New York Times, there's a whole section of games, and they have everybody knows about the New York Times crossword, but
it's huge. Yeah.
but they have 2 really fantastic games, which are also word games. It's like a little puzzle, and you have to find the words hidden in the puzzle. And then there's one where you have to make words by connecting letters.
Right.
I hope they don't mess this up.
Well, it's good apparently. These things are very good because they keep your brain active, and for people who they're worried about their brain atrophying and getting a bit worse at everything. These games are very important. They've already proven that Sudoku and crosswords and all of that stuff helps, especially people who are getting older, to start to arrest cognitive decline. I wish they'd given Joe Biden a bunch of these games before he became president. We might have had less problems.
I think Joe Biden just doesn't care. I think Joe Biden is at that age, that old age where he's just like, I don't care. I
do think he's nice. I think he's senile. But Richard says American spelling's very annoying. Yesterday I tried tumor and rumor before I got it.
Oh, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got these letters like this, then you've got every letter right except for that one. And every time you're trying, and then you see it edging towards the 6 words, and you're like, oh.
Tracy says ultimate bugbear American pronunciation: aluminum, because they don't say aluminium. Pergola. Now, what do they say? Pergola.
How do they say that?
I know they say herbs, but only in certain states do they say herbs for herbs. The American hatred of the letter U, says Congo Chris, is annoying. Not as annoying as their pronunciation of aluminum. Don't like that. People do not like that at all. And a guava is apparently a prairie tomato. I heard something yesterday. I heard something you'll enjoy yesterday, Pums. Somebody said country music is basically farm emo. So we're not going to call country music anymore. We're going to call it farm emo. I love it. All right, let's
how's about that Dolly?
Yeah, your Dolly. You talking about Dolly Parton?
Yes, she's the ultimate country emo star.
Oh, she's great. We both discussed this before. We love Dolly.
I love Dolly. But okay, Tiger DC here is paying 16 Rand a day to play Wordle.
What?
Tiger, you're on the wrong app.
Oh, no, it's free.
It's
Dude,
free.
that's not. No. Don't pay for anything. Just just Google it and you'll find it's free. You don't need an app.
It's on a website. It's not an
Yeah.
app. It's on
I just- Right.
Wordle. I think it's wordle.uk.co.uk.
Just play it on your app, on your browser. Yeah, it's powerlanguage.co.uk.
Yeah, powerlanguage.co.uk.
But you can look up Wordle and it'll take you there. Don't
It's
download
free.
an app. And, you don't need an app.
And when the news came out that New York Times is buying it, I mean, the big outcry was, are we going to have to subscribe to the New York Times to play Wordle now? They said, don't worry, it's going to stay free.
Yeah. So don't, if you can find a free version of something, don't pay for it, for heaven's sake. Okay. So let me introduce you to a new intern who's joining the team, and it's actually Simphiwe's intern, right? So
Simphiwe gets an intern,
Yeah, so don't let him get too full of himself. His name is Bakabantu. I introduced you to him just the other day.
This is for me.
He wasn't there. But now you are Simphiwe's intern, so I hope that she's going to be very strict with you because, Simphiwe doesn't take any shit. And she's got a long list of things for you to do. And you're going to be doing the show with her on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
Yeah. That's the plan. Only reason why I said I'm Simphiwe's intern and I'm kind of smooching up because she's the only one who seems to be around in studio. She's the only person I've met except for Rina, who's pretty cool.
She's
pretty
also
cool person.
Simphiwe is the only person who actually knows how everything works. So you need to be friends with her. And if you upset her, she's going to be very mean to you.
Well, Mulele would disagree, and Sis Jane would also disagree with the only person knowing what goes on around here. Me and Sis Jane had a tiff over the
eyeball.
Already?
No, it was not a tiff. It was more of a charged argument. We were fighting over the printer. She's like, you have to print like this. I'm like, yeah, but there's a setting for that. She's like, no, don't Kennick like this. So I was like, okay, Sis Jane. Hierarchy. Hierarchy is respected.
If you know what's good for you, you will not look for trouble with Jane.
No, but she's like the nicest person ever.
Oh no, she's not. Many of the greatest people who've ever been at CliffCentral, and we're talking about famous people, wealthy people, powerful people, their biggest mistake has been antagonizing Jane because things just go horribly wrong from then on.
But I met her on the stairs. She was cleaning. She's like, oh, hi, you can just go up. I'm like, oh, cool. You have a meeting with Rina. Oh, she's coming in late. I'm like, oh, Jane, is this you? Because I've heard different stories. I've heard different stories about her.
Did she give you a look or did she smile?
She smiled.
That's
a good place to start.
It's a good place to start. Yeah, then I met Kamu. Yeah, I met everyone basically that day except Sis Phumi and you.
So tell us quickly, because we're the only two you haven't met, and now ironically you meet us on the show. So tell us quickly a bit about you. Where are you from, and what's your day job when you're not interning for us?
Okay, so to speak about the weather, I'm from the Karoo, so we get cold, and I'm from Cradock, Gareth. I know your disdain for Cradock. I'm from Cradock.
Cradock. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought only livestock is from there. You the actual person from Cradock.
Wow. No, because plus Dorpie Kunt.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah, my Afrikaans teacher would be proud right now. Yeah, I don't speak German, as for me. I speak Afrikaans. Yeah. But yeah, not born in Cradock, born in the rurals, raised in Cradock. Mom's a nurse. Yeah, that's the classic black story. A kid who dreamed of Joburg, came up to Wits, and then flunked out to Wits due to undetermined circumstances, as our people would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just being a fan of the show, And then
what do you do? What do you do now? What did you end up doing for money?
Oh yeah, no. What I'm doing, I'm currently doing an internship in biomedical sciences. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay. So my chosen field.
Would you work in a lab or something?
Yep, I'm in a lab. Cytology. So study of cells. Break down the word. Cytology. So I'm looking at either cancer or not cancer. So when you go to the doctor and you're like, oh, I probably have cancer, and they take an FNA, fine needle aspirate, or something, or a sample, they send it to me. I look at it under the microscope, obviously process and whatnot. But I tell the doctor, cancer, not cancer, infection.
Sure, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's not as great as it seems, Gareth. There's a lot of you're just sitting and looking at the microscope, and just every cell looks the same, from your like respiratory cells to like down to the cervix. They all look the same.
No, I don't agree. Nerves.
No,
nerves.
Okay, nerves. Okay, but like that's more specialized. That's more like cytogenetics and like EM, like electron microscope. So like I'm not that far. Like I thought about cytogenetics, but I was like, I can't be here forever.
How did you get from Craddock into that field? No, seriously, this is like, because when you decide what you're going to do and study, it's also because of exposure, right? So how did that, and that's a very long way away from each other, those two things.
No, everyone in Craddock is a scientist, actually. Like that's the biggest misconception ever. Like everyone in the crew is like super like on top of their game. Like besides all the Afrikaans and the Plastira thing going on. No, I'm joking. Sure. But like no, I'm joking. Like everything in Craddock is either biltong or plus.
Well, you're getting compliments here. Gale Force says Simphiwe chooses interns with looks. Wow, okay. Oh. And then even Lebang, who's not on the show this morning, she's like, Simphiwe gets an intern, soft life.
So, guys, me and Simphiwe are close. Yes, my youngest. Look at her dancing in the background. I wish I could like show it.
Well, it seems like one of our listeners is also from Craddock. I mean, this guy's asking you, is he a Malosian or a CHSian? That's Michael, who's now in Switzerland.
So CHS. Volrama.
Is that a school?
Yeah, no, like there's two schools. So there's Landbouw Hoërskool, Malo, and there's Hoërskool Craddock. So CHS. Wow. But apparently they're proposing the changing of Craddock from like Craddock, as in like after Sir John Craddock, into Kaladokwe, which is the closest like pronunciation of it. So I don't know if I will say I'm from KSH, I don't know. But yeah, well,
it's just that is the municipality functional there, because I always say if they want to rename anything, they better come up with like a good reason to get everything working first.
Well, the street lights don't work. The trash, the trash gets picked up at least. The electricity is spotty, except in the location for some reason, because once something happens in the location, everything burns. So don't piss off the wrong people. But like everyone in town, like. And I'm a town boy. Everyone in town like suffers. Potholes everywhere. I don't know. But yeah, this is Phumi, like to go from Craddock up until here, I got exposed to Joburg. And then Joburg opened my mind. Because like small town syndrome, I come from Craddock, come up to Joburg. I wanted to study at Wits. I studied something called Bachelor of Accounting Science. It sounded so I got accepted for medicine or that, right? BXI. So I'm like, I was looking at it. I'm like, science, accounting. Oh, that's like a great merger. And it's just accounting. It's just Wits just does everything differently. They don't call it BCom accounting. It's just accounting. So it was just accounting. And then after 2 years of that, I was like, depression and what you might call it.
Yeah,
and
accounting will do that.
Yeah, like I'm not funding you.
Depress the hell out of you. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just like, this is my life. I can't do this. And then like a bunch of problems and whatnot. But like the one takeaway is I did res life proper, like proper res life, men's res, like raiders were like out there, like it was like all Americanism. I was so impressed because it's like, it's not toga parties, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Like there's res rivalries, because we were raiders and we had a rivalry res. We stole mascots, we vandalized other reses with all within reason.
That sounds like an American college experience. That
no, Wits did it proper. Because after I was done, like I also met a guy called Kaya Sitole, very very interesting man.
We've had him on the show. You remember him, Gareth?
Yeah, he was on the Burning Platform. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so after that, so then I'm deciding, okay, I'm gonna go back to Craddock. I'm just gonna be a homebody. Like, I'm just gonna live off my mother, my poor mother, love her to bits. And then my mom was like, no. Yeah, like my mom was like, no. Called her sister. Her sister works for the National Health Laboratory Services. So nepotism got me a bursary. Bursary got me into this.
Not the worst story.
Not the worst story. Like, it's still a picture that I'm still building, Gareth. Like I told Rena, like I like what I do, but I don't love it.
But dude, you know, what your story proves is that you can, given the opportunity, and this is what I love about people who take opportunities as opposed to people who just sit and complain about them. I mean, you could easily still be sponging off your mom in Craddock, right?
Yeah.
But here, you saw an opportunity to get a bursary and study something, even though it wasn't something that you thought you'd be interested in. And now you're putting your effort in, you're doing what you have to do. And I respect that. Sometimes you don't always get your first choice, you know? You go to the shop and the shop says, oh, sorry, we're out of vanilla ice cream. You'll have to have chocolate. So you're like, yeah, well, okay, I'll make the best with chocolate ice cream. Or what are you going to do? Throw a tantrum? Say how much the universe isn't doing what you want it to do? I respect it.
Well, Gareth, I think the appropriate reaction is cancel the shop, cancel vanilla ice cream because of like white colonialism.
Yes. Did you guys hear this situation with Dali Mpofu and the letter that was written about what he's done at the JSC and how it's not wrong and it's not his fault? It's like this. There are some people in this country who will make any excuse for certain people, and for others, too bad. Screw you. Especially if you're poor and you come from like some little town in South Africa. And I'm not picking on you here, I promise, Bagabantu. But like, it's amazing how people will bend over backwards and do intellectual gymnastics in order to forgive stupidity and bad behavior from one of their own. But if it's someone they don't know, someone they don't like, someone they don't respect, tough titties. They're going to treat you with zero respect. They're going to help you in no way. And this whole Dali Mpofu thing, we can talk about a little bit later on, but I do want to hear what you, Phumi, in particular, have to say about it, because I know you pay attention to these things and you're not one of those willfully ignorant people like I sometimes am about state capture and shit like that.
You know what? The Dali situation. The Dali situation is unfortunate on so many levels, because even when you have valid concerns, you know, which is, there are some for those of us who saw some of the JSC interviews and saw his behavior, you can understand why other professionals are saying, I don't want to be, this guy cannot be the person that stands up for me and my profession.
Yeah.
This behavior is just unacceptable, right? So that's the first part. But because of where we are, where lines are drawn and, you know, guns are out, everybody is on tender hooks. You then have a situation that has been distorted on so many different levels. So then there's, you know, the Black Lawyers Forum has written their letter. There's the Pretoria Bar has written their letter. And people are like, look who's not signing the letter from the Black Lawyers Association, who hasn't put their name on. Does that mean they don't support another Black lawyer? It's bullshit.
See, I mean,
to quote you, manufactured outrage.
Yeah.
It's all of that. It's always manufactured outrage.
And even where there is a legitimate cause for concern, because of all of the stuff around it, people are too busy with bullshit. People are so busy with the bullshit that keeps them comfortable and happy and distracted from the real stuff. Like, there are real problems. We have real shit going down that needs people to like apply themselves and solve it. No. We're gonna write an angry letter.
I mean,
as Rome was burning, Nero was fiddling on top of the hill.
Yeah,
so
it seems like the letter that came from concerned advocates seems to be targeting particularly Adrian Basson, who seems to have written an article about Dali Mpofu, which was not very kind. But at the same time, not being kind to an individual because of their behavior is not obviously racism. But, you know, this is it's the old trope that needs to be trotted out every time an argument can't be won. And I'm so over this. Like, I looked at it and I thought, first of all, I'm really pleased I'm not in law, because, you know, I studied that and I would just be tearing my hair out if this was the kind of nonsense that passes as legal intellectual rigor. And remember, we're not talking about some like low-level lawyer who's just been in his first junior position at a law firm or has been practicing at the bar for like 2 or 3 years. We're talking about people here at the Judicial Services Commission, These are supposedly some of the best and brightest in the country, and they're not. I mean, we had Songezo Zibi on Tuesday, who's written an unbelievably powerful article. Of course, they're not going after Songezo Zibi because they can't actually undermine Songezo because he's a black man with an enormous brain. And he was the editor of Business Day for God knows how long. And he can use language that would make the people who wrote this Dani Mpofu statement in defense thing, he would make them spin. He's so good at this. He wrote pretty much the same thing. He maybe was a little more polite. But Songezo said, these can't be the best legal minds in our country. These can't be the people who offer us the best advice and offer the president the best advice on who to appoint to the bench. Surely not. We could do better than this with our eyes closed. Anyway, they're not going to go after Songezo. They're going after Adrian Basson, who frankly I hold no candle for because I don't like his publication. And I don't like much of what Adrian Basson has written. Maybe it's time for him to also be cancelled the way that everyone else in this country is eventually going to be cancelled. Everybody gets their turn, right? I mean, you were joking, Bakabantu, but the fact is, like, everyone will get their turn to be cancelled.
Yeah, like, no. But, like, they tried to cancel you guys. What? They tried to cancel the Birding platform. I was there for that. I actually got into an argument with a very close friend of mine about that because I didn't listen to the show, and then she told me about it. Then she's like, "Oh, this is what happened. Oh, you're a Gareth Cliff fan. What do you think?" I'm like, "I didn't watch the show. I didn't listen to it, but probably he said this." She's like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right." Like, "Yeah, you just like him." You're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah." Like, yeah, but like coming from Wits, like, everyone's woke, so I have that whole EFF mentality, but then we all grow out of it.
What does that mean, EFF mentality?
No. I was there when we were decolonizing, right? So the 2015, 2016, those were my years. We were decolonizing everything there. We were changing Senate House to Solomon Mahlangu House. I was there when what's that guy's name? He was president at the time, but he got impeached for saying he loves Hitler and like Wits is ran by the Jews.
Yes.
Forgot the name. I really forgot his name. But like, yeah, I was there for that entire shebang. Yeah, something Dlamini.
I interviewed him on my
Dlamini.
That's right.
Yeah, like he recognized Hitler as his hero and whatnot. So we're all there, all woke, having discussions. There's a great experiment at Wits called Black Thought that was like very eye-opening.
Oh, yeah.
Like it happens once a year. Like I don't know if it still happens now, but like I attended two of them when I was there. Like it's like intellectual minds who just talk about Black history and whatnot. So you're all radicalized. Like that's what university does to you. Yeah, but I remember having a falling out with one of these EFF dudes because I knew him like on a personal, not a personal capacity, but he used to hang around Rez. Vianney Pambo. Oh, he's like an MP now, right? I think he's a spokesperson of the EFF. Yeah, and then he's like, dude, and then he's like, because we were talking, and then he's like, where do you come from? Like, I'm coming from the Eastern Cape. He's like, oh, I'm doing Xhosa. And then he starts going like, oh no, but like obviously you put up a character, you're like, I talk like this because I'm a comrade to relate to the people, but I actually went to like a private school and I speak like this. Like, yeah, like that's me.
Champagne socialists.
Yeah, so you got a lot of that at Wits where like these rich kids were like leading the strike, against poverty, and then all of them are like trust fund kids, and you're like they're like, oh, wow, I'm actually being like what financially excluded from Wits, and these kids aren't. But there's a lot of
they come from money. They're putting on a show, and they're playing a game. I mean, I know this with people high up in all the political parties. They all play this game where they're pretending that they've got some kind of a mandate from poor people. But the last poor person they spoke to was probably 10 years ago.
Also, Gareth, like another thing this country needs to understand, like on a serious note, like racism, I'm not saying it's not a problem. It's not the problem.
Oh, careful. You can say that. Jesus Christ. If I try and say that.
Yeah, I can say, I qualify.
I mean, we can even have independent research done on this, that it doesn't feature in the top 10 things people worry about on a daily basis. But
like on a daily basis, it's hunger. It's hunger. Not world hunger, because that's also a scam, but it's hunger and poverty. Corruption is up there. And corruption is not racist.
Look at this. Freddie says Adrian Basson is an idiot. He should have been cancelled a long time ago. You are part of the cancel culture then, Freddie, if you're happy to say that.
The fact that you hate someone shouldn't mean that you cancel them. Guys, people hate people. Like, you know who canceled people? Like I think one of the person who coined cancel culture, like I'm getting my history so wrong, but like the emperor, is that a thing? Is that a myth or is that real?
No,
yeah, like
no,
like
you
when the emperor was in the Colosseum, it's like, I like you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That was the original cancel culture, I think. Like, you see, if we go back there, like, it's barbaric. You can't just end someone's livelihood because you disagree with them.
Well, we've got a lot to cover this morning, but I'm glad we got to meet you, and we'll obviously talk some more to you over the next few weeks. I mean, you gave us some pretty damn interesting insight into like student politics for a second there. But we'll catch up later, Bakabantu. Nice to see you, man. And I hope you're going to enjoy working for Simphiwe. It's going to be a hard slog.
Best boss ever. Love you, boss.
Careful, she'll get mean at some point. All right. Thanks, man. Nice to see you. There he is. We got a new intern, and he has things to say. Hey, Pums? He's no wallflower.
So cute. Love him.
All right. So,
that boisterous youth.
I know. We got to look at one or two headlines. What do you want to know about? City of China disconnects businesses, residents who owe it money.
Hey!
Yeah.
It was like they're on an all-star tour yesterday, just tweeting from everywhere.
So many businesses and residents who owe money to the city of Tshwane have spent Wednesday trying to get their power reconnected. The city's gone on an aggressive campaign to make sure that they all pay up, with a debtors book of 17 billion rand. The luxury Sheraton Hotel has seen its power cut. They said the hotel owes 23 million rand and needs to make arrangements to pay up. It's right in front of the Union Buildings, that hotel. Also, some shopping centers are on the list.
They were at the malls. They were at the. At the end of the day, it became a bit of a joke on Twitter, right? Because it was like, I'm telling you, they were like on an all-star tour. They started in the morning. They were like tweeting pictures of we're here, we're disconnecting. This is how much they owe. We're here now. This is how much they owe. And then towards the end of the day, they were like, okay, the landlords made arrangements. We've reconnected them.
Yeah, I'll show you a screenshot of they reconnected the Navy after the Navy eventually paid their bills. But this is hilarious. I mean, listen, at some point we have to pay up, right? So here the city of China says the landlord who owns the building that houses the Navy has paid. Busy reconnecting. And then there's pictures of like the mayor, Randall Williams, running around, and he's switching people off, like Phumi says, and switching them back on. It's all very, very interesting. Let's see how it goes, because maybe if they put the fear of God into especially the big, the ones who owe a lot, like the Sheraton Hotel or Denel apparently owe a lot of money, then maybe they'll start to behave themselves and these people will pay on time. You can't get something for nothing. Sorry. Even if, Eskom is as crap as they are, and we know they are. We'll discuss that in the Burning Platform later. But you have to pay. If you want the electricity, you got to pay. You get nothing for nothing. And speaking of electricity, this is probably going to be one of the biggest stories of our lifetimes as it starts to develop. But European scientists say they've made a major breakthrough in their quest to develop practical nuclear fusion, the energy process that powers the stars. The UK-based Jet Laboratory has smashed its own world record for the amount of energy it could extract by squeezing together two forms of hydrogen. This is so exciting. If nuclear fusion can be successfully recreated on Earth, it holds the potential of unlimited low radiation, low carbon energy. The experiments produced 59 megajoules of energy over 5 seconds. That's 11 megawatts of power.
Wow.
That's more than double. That's more than double what they achieved in 1997. And people have been saying, well, fusion, it could be the future, but they've kind of got stuck and nothing new's come about. Well, this is new. And apparently that energy output is only enough to boil about 60 kettles of water. But the significance is that it validates all kinds of choices that have been made for a much bigger fusion reactor that's being constructed in France. So they say, we've demonstrated we can create a mini star inside of our machine, and we can hold it there for 5 seconds, get high performance, which takes us into a whole new realm. If you know anything about energy, this is probably one of the most exciting things that could happen. And I'm really, really hoping that this isn't the last we hear from these people at Jet Laboratories. Let's see if we can get nuclear fusion up and running. Be very good.
That is an exciting development.
So 2 stories in the news about electricity, and we'll have electricity on the front page of the Burning Platform this morning. We'll be focusing in on that with Chris Yelland, who's been a regular on the show. When it comes to understanding how Eskom does or doesn't work, he's the guy to talk to. But I want to change gear for a second and introduce you to 2 people who are really, really talented artists. They're also people who are craftsmen and masters of their craft. And, I do love when we can meet people who are excellent at what they do. A long time ago, I said I get addicted to the most stupid things on YouTube. And I mentioned, remember, Phumi, I told you that I get addicted to those hydraulic presses that crush. I watch those, and then I'll watch, before I know it, I've watched like 30 minutes of hydraulic presses crushing things. The other thing I got into was sort of middle of last year was those epoxy tables that they make. Where they mix that epoxy, they put some color in it, and then they make these beautiful pieces of furniture. Oh my God, it's magnificent. And then when they pour it, it looks like a whole world, a universe that's trapped in this epoxy or this wood or this rock or whatever they're using. Anyway, I found these guys who are just absolutely incredible. And I met Byron, and here's Byron. Say how's it to Byron. Hey, Byron, how are you, dude?
Hey, Gareth, how's it going?
Nice to see you, man. And we'll meet David in a second. But how are you, and how's business, first of all? Because this is what you do. You make epoxy furniture, tables, all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, so business has been pretty good. We went through a pretty difficult spell during November and December period, but it's been pretty good. We kind of switched our focus to supplying resin and positioning ourselves as the first South African manufacturers of resin itself, and just placing a big focus on direct training and direct customer service, building relationships with all the people that are coming into the industry, that are looking to learn how to build tables, learn how to do not only tables, but we do floor coatings. I don't know if you've ever seen the floor coating systems that we've done, but we do. Wow. We can change like cheap tiles to make them look like marble out finishes.
Wow.
We do the same thing with kitchen counters, renovating kitchens completely at a fraction of the cost of Caesar stone and marble. And yeah, we've started producing these products ourselves. And as I understand, we're the only people in South Africa that have the capacity to actually make these products. So yeah.
But what I like is that you guys also supply ordinary people who are just doing it for a hobby. And you can supply the resins and you can help people with all of that stuff. You can even train them and teach them how to do all of this. And God knows in this country, we need more and more people who are skilled in something, right? And if it's making beautiful stuff like you guys make, and I'll show some of the pictures just now, that's really exciting.
Well, yeah, as I said, that's kind of our focus now. Our focus is in actually enabling people to come into the resin market, because it can be quite intimidating to build these huge pieces by yourself. It is quite expensive, so it's a lot of money to waste if you don't know what you're doing. And so, we've been making a couple of YouTube videos as well, just doing a couple of tutorials. We host training seminars for people to attend. And we've got handbooks we hand out with our products. And yeah, that's pretty much become our focus.
Let's bring David on. Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, Gareth, I'm good, and you?
Cool, man. Very, very good. So you also obviously, you guys run this business together. What kind of stuff do you mostly make, David?
Well, Gareth, this actually started off as a hobby in making chopping boards and coffee tables and dining room tables. But the potential of epoxy, I always tell people that come to the classes, your imagination is the limit. So I mean, you can make lamps and all of that. So we basically dabble in making whatever we can push the resin to do. We're always experimenting with new stuff. And
you've made a clock for CliffCentral, which I can't wait to see. But I just want to show you pictures of the table for those people who are listening now and going, I just need to visualize this. So here's a table that you guys made for me. There's the resin is this dark black, but it's actually transparent for me in between these two beautiful pieces.
Sure.
What wood is that again? It's
called
camphor.
Camphor wood.
Yeah. So you get it. Do you ever get that smell that comes from it, Gareth?
Beautiful, most beautiful smell. It's absolutely gorgeous. And don't they use camphor for storing like furniture and stuff? Right? I mean, no, storing clothes. They use it for like putting, they make certain cupboards are made out of. It's an expensive wood. It's not cheap wood at all. But
I think they would use it because the actual camphor that is in the wood that they would use to make the cream. I think it's a natural
like Ingram's.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, exactly.
It's a natural insect repellent, so it'll keep away the moths and all of that from the clothes.
So you selected these two beautiful pieces of wood, and then what you do is you make a table around them. So
correct,
you do the legs here, which is obviously metal work. Then you do the epoxy, the resin in between, and it's like a masterwork. It's really beautifully done. Not everyone can do this, guys. Let's be honest. You can learn to do an approximation, but this is pretty damn fine.
Yeah, so Gareth, that's basically what we've got a lot of talent in this country, and there are very talented craftsmen that are making these projects, but they can be quite intimidating, like Byron said. And what we want to do is bring it to the mass market, that people that see these things don't have to be so intimidated, and they can make it themselves at home.
So where are you guys, and how do people get to your workshops?
So we're based in Jet Park. Our workshops are in Boksburg, and we have a website where we sell all our products online. You can come in and buy products from us in store as well. We're very contactable, guys, so you can reach us on WhatsApp. All our clients that have bought epoxy from us and have bought their own projects, we've assisted them directly with the whole process from A to Z. And we've sold epoxy into Botswana, Zambia, Namibia, all the way down to Cape Town. And it's as David said, there's a number of talented craftsmen in this country, and our goal is to enable them to be able to do what we do.
What's the website?
I'm going to put it up now. Put it
Epoxy
up. Emporium, yeah.
Epoxy
and it's
Emporium.
Emporium spelled with a pour, P-O-U-R, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Like the real thing.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to put that up. So there's the address, and if you're interested in this, I mean, listen, this could be something. Everybody's looking for something to do that isn't necessarily work, but if you're really good at it, it could end up being a business. But if you want to learn how to do this, because again, watching these YouTube videos, guys, and this is where I first found out about this art, this craft, this skill, is on YouTube. I was watching people pouring the actual epoxy and creating these beautiful things, and then they obviously sand it and polish it. And I've just got to put up
the part that gets everybody that's the part that watching those videos kind of keeps you mesmerized for hours. It's the making it smooth, taking all the bubbles out of it.
Now, I love this table of mine, but I'm a little jealous when I see this one. That is unbelievable. So beautiful. What did you use there? I mean, is it the same resin and you just put in a color?
So this is actually one of the craftsmen that uses our own resin. He built this table.
Is that the guy in the background there?
Yes, they're a company called Talented Woodcraft, and they've built a number of these pieces that are in stunning homes all over Johannesburg.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Gareth, it's the same. So you use the resin. It's the same resin in all the tables. You just pigment it differently. So that table, I mean, if you added more of that blue pigment, it would go darker, and if you added less, it would be more transparent. So it's entirely up to the craftsman or the people that are pouring it. You can basically do whatever you want with that color. You can mix the colors. You can put a whole bunch of different colors together. Do it in layers to create a different effect. There's so much you can do with this product. It's insane.
And this
was made. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Byron.
Byron, go ahead.
This is an Australian beef wood with a envy green pigment. This was made for a Serbian guy, Dave.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. Serbian gentleman by Dollar Woodcraft, one of our customers.
Magic.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, like what I love about this, and one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show is not just to talk about what you guys make, but how you can actually train people and teach people to use this stuff, and they can buy their raw materials from you.
Yes, okay.
Obviously, you know, you can get any piece of wood, right? You could pick up a piece of driftwood if you wanted to and build something around it, but it takes a fair amount of skill. And you guys will do the training, you'll supply the stuff, and people can get into this. It can become something that you do on weekends.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So our goal is actually to enable craftsmen to build tables. We've moved away from building tables as a business because we don't really want to eat their market. We want to create a market for them and help them thrive. So we only really build tables, bespoke pieces for yourself. We've built a couple of tables, but our stuff is really one of a kind pieces. We don't churn out a factory of epoxy resin tables. We enable craftsmen to do that. And like we said, we do flooring as well. We do floor coatings. We do kitchen counters. We're busy building a glow-in-the-dark chessboard at the moment. That's
so good. Listen, Carl wants to know, and you can probably answer this question now. He says, my hobby for this year is to build an outdoor bar. I want to sink 2 big railway sleepers in resin. Is this possible?
Definitely possible.
Yeah. I also saw a comment that said, can we make a giant life-size resin? What did you say?
Epoxy statue
of Gareth.
Who the hell would want that? I wouldn't even want that. Is resin very hardy? I mean, like you use it for a coffee table, for example. It's not going to get hot under a coffee cup and melt, is it? It's very strong stuff.
Yes, no, it is very strong, Gareth. You can you get different mixtures of the epoxy. So you can go, like the mixture that we do for the countertops is very different to the mixture that we would put into a table. Your countertops, you want that resin to be harder than what it would be on the table. The table resin has to be a little bit more flexible because of the movement of the wood. So yeah, it's very versatile, and depending on the application, certain mixtures of the epoxy are harder than others. So, and to answer that question, we could make a big statue of Gareth. Just take a lot of epoxy and a big silicone mold.
But here's an interesting question. What about kids? Do you do like kids classes? Because
that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, look, when it comes to the resin, there are certain safety aspects that have to be followed. You know, like with regards to the hardener aspect of the resin, they are fairly corrosive. So you've got to be very careful, wear your gloves. If you do get resin on your skin, you've got to wipe it off. Don't touch your eyes. So when it comes to kids' classes, I think at a certain age, we could actually do it where they can pay attention to the safety aspect of the resin. But definitely possible.
Have you ever had a real disaster where you either the stuff didn't harden, or where it just went wrong, or the color changed suddenly, or because these things happen to everybody, and I'm sure it happens to even the best people in the world, like you guys.
How much time have we got on the show?
You have to start from scratch.
Yeah, we've paid a lot of school fees to learn everything that we've learned.
But being a craftsman, that you have to think on your toes. So one of the dining room tables that Byron and I first made was an absolute disaster, and it ended up turning into chopping boards, coasters, and smaller side tables because it couldn't be used as a dining room table. So yeah, you got to be resourceful and channel it. You don't want to throw it away. You can always use it for something.
So when I think about epoxy, right, I think about super glue, and so how quickly do you have to work, like before it sits, before it's can't be moved?
You get different variations on that. So for instance, like an art resin that we've been working with now, the people actually wanted to cure in they say they wanted to go hard in about an hour to 4 hours, where the guys that are building tables, they wanted to go hard in maybe 12 to 24, some even to 48 hours. So it all depends on the application, but we can make it cure as fast as we need it to do for that specific application.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it is part of the glue family. So it is in glue.
and also just to jump back to your question, Gareth, because it comes up a lot where people ask us, this epoxy is not going to melt under a coffee cup, or, how resistant is it to weathering? Epoxy is extremely durable. That's why it's used in logistics warehouses as floor coatings. It's got a higher MPa than standard grade concrete, and it's used as a coating system for boats and yachts because it's anti-corrosive to salt water. So it's extremely durable.
What's MPa?
It's the way we measure hardness.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the Mohs scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mohs scale of hardness. Listen, guys,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that we got to have you on the show finally, because we've been talking for months about doing this. And I know how many businesses like yours have started up under lockdown, and they're doing really, really well. And some of them have been through some tough times and changed the business plan. But congratulations on everything that you're doing. And I hope we create a whole new market here. You're already doing it. And more people get into this.
Yes, that's the whole idea, Gareth. The more people that we can get doing this, I mean, at the end of the day, it's art. And, it's a way for people to express themselves, as well as a way to create an income. So people make beautiful pieces. They can have a sideline business, or it can become their full-time business. So we're very excited.
As I said earlier, Epoxy Emporium, but the Emporium is EMPOURIUM.com. Go and visit them and find out. Maybe you want to take up a course. Maybe you want to go and get some resin and try yourself. Go and do it, and Byron and David will show you around. They'll give you the ins and outs. Thanks, guys. It's awesome to have you on, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Gareth.
Thanks for giving us the platform, Gareth. Appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much.
What a pleasure, guys. Nice to see you both. Isn't that cool, Pums?
That is very cool.
I could see you making a table.
Dude, that floor. When they like, but that's why I'm saying, I always think about it as super glue. And that kind of gets very sticky very quickly. So even as you watch them do it on the YouTube channels, you still wonder,
apparently the key is you can either do it so that you include little air bubbles in it, or you have to try and pour it so you don't get any air bubbles in it. But it's a real skill, and some of these guys are just absolutely incredible when you watch them.
It's gorgeous.
These David and Byron are really sharp.
So does your table have that? What is it's a little bit piney, camphor. So if it's the Ingrams, I mean, I'm sure it's not as sweet as the Ingram smell.
It smells beautiful. It smells like those old kists that your grandmother used to have, that you used to store stuff in. Not like the mothballs you put in, but the smell of the actual wood. That's kind of what it smells like. It's amazing. It's the most beautiful stuff.
Gareth, you talk about a kist. I have to tell you this for 30 seconds quickly. My grandmother passed away towards the end of last year. And so my mom's been cleaning out her house and putting stuff away, giving stuff, all of that. And my mother is freaking out about her kist, because when there's a tradition when you get married, one of the things that they give the young bride is a kist with all of the stuff that you take with you to your new family, to the in-laws. And my mom's kist has now been at my grandmother's house all this time. And she even had a dream about, what if I give it away, and then what's going to happen? She is freaking out about her kist. I was like, you haven't even seen it in how long? And now she's just
it's such an old tradition, hey? And it's a real
it is.
It's almost like a cross-cultural thing as well, that you get this. That's your as opposed to the lobola that the man's family has to pay to the woman. The woman's family give her this stuff to go with her into a new life. It's amazing. I mean, that's such a beautiful thing. So what did she have in it, or was it just the actual box?
So blankets, books, also coming out of my grandmother's house in my mother's keys. I stuff from my mother's grade, what would it be? Grade 8, kind of her grade 8 reports and books and journals and stuff, because little girls, they write those little diaries and whatever. So my mom found all of that stuff still at my grandmother's house.
Beautiful. That is a nice story. You find stuff like that lying around. It almost feels like we're going into an episode of Collectomania this morning. But we do have the burning platform up next, and that is our chance to catch up on all the things that are going on in the news. Of course, last week we saw a return of the dreaded load shedding. And this man has warned us pretty much every year consistently, and that's why we love talking to him, because he's the only guy who we know who speaks absolute sense about this, and that's Chris Yelland. And Chris will be joining us this morning to tell us even more about what is and isn't working at Eskom, because we need to know. This is life and death for many of us, and it certainly is for many businesses. And some of us have had load shedding up to here, and some of us are just used to it now. But we'll find out from Chris Yelland what's going on in Eskom and what isn't going on in Eskom. And we'll also be joined by Koketso Resane, and we will speak a little bit about some of the things that are going on in the news. I'm looking forward to that. All of it's on the way. CliffCentral.com. Stick around for that and a whole lot more. It's just after 7 o'clock.
Her technique was called the razor. You had something to do with killing people. You looked up to the fascists, the Axis Pact.
Okayed the killing of hundreds of thousands of people, experiment on live people, tie people to poles, and then drop bombs and things on them and see what happened to them. He was plotting to bomb Pearl Harbor, take out America at the knees. Suffer from collectivism?
I started collecting when I was about 8 years old.
Do you have an obsession with objects?
I sort of got into collecting TV cars.
Are you a fanatic? A devotee? Are you someone exhibiting enthusiasm or strong passion?
When lockdown hits, when everyone was kind of bored at home, they started Googling, like, what are these things worth these days?
CliffCentral dispenses a weekly dose of collectomania. Join me as I talk to compulsive collectors. Fascinating.
The frame's total value is probably about 12,000 Rand.
Possibly a little weird.
I developed this infatuation with the Statue of Liberty.
Collectomania, Mondays on the Gareth Cliff Show. Brought to you by SA Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. Indeed, it is time for the Burning Platform, which, of course, every week we take to looking at all the current affairs stories that are in the news. We look at what's going on in people's lives and the things people are most concerned with. And this morning's Burning Platform is no different. I'm very pleased to welcome to the show this morning someone who's no stranger to us. He is Chris Yelland. How are you, sir?
All very well, Gareth. Thanks for having me, and good morning to your listeners.
Nice to see you, Chris. Although when we're speaking to you, it's usually because things aren't going very well at Eskom. So when are things going well at Eskom? You're pretty much busy 24/7 then, right?
Yeah, it has been a busy year, a busy 10 years, in fact. As we face these energy issues, it's become something that is on every single person's mind, every business, every farmer, every individual, every worker, because electricity impacts every single one of us.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to hearing your input and your thoughts and your expertise on all of this. We're also going to welcome Koketso Resane. Hey, Koketso, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a lovely morning, so let's keep it moving. Good to be here for the first time.
So I'm very happy to have you on, Koketso. You're a business informatics professional. You're also a conservative social commentator and a co-host on the Libertarian Man Patria podcast. And we've spoken to Dumo Denga here before, and he's obviously a colleague of yours. But it's nice to have a fresh face on the Burning Platform.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so gents, let's just start off, Chris. It seems obvious, but Phumi, do you mind if I start off with asking Chris, what is the state of affairs in our massive and revolting monopolistic power supplier? What's going on there? And I see people, new faces on TV, explaining to us how everything is under control. I saw a new guy the other day who I've never seen before, making excuses for Eskom. Is their PR department in overdrive, or is there actually change happening?
I think there is slow change happening. It's a long haul, but the restructuring is in process, and it's very necessary. And there's a lot of effort being placed in sorting out procurement issues, making sure that it's less wastage. There's a lot of effort going into operational issues. That is the sort of performance of the fleet. I think it's much less successful than they would hope for, or we would hope for. There are diminishing returns to maintenance of old clapped out plant. And ultimately, we've got to look towards new plant that replaces the old plant as the way forward. Maintenance can only take you so far. And you can keep a car going almost forever, but you cannot push it hard forever. You can drive it on a Sunday to church, to weddings. But if you need a workhorse, you have got to have more than a vintage car that has been severely abused. But I think the other thing I want to say, Gareth, is that we mustn't only look to Eskom's dysfunctionality. The problems in the energy sector go much further than that, from the Eskom to the municipal electricity sector, and in fact to the whole energy sector, which really needs a thorough relook.
So, Chris, first of all, I drove to Mpumalanga just the other day, and I drove past either Kusile or Medupi or both. And I was looking at them, and they're these huge constructions, right? And they're not that old. I mean, these were built quite recently, but they seem to always be in dysfunction. There's always some problem. There's always something going on, whether it's coal supply or whether it's one of the units that has gone down, one of them that hasn't been maintained. What is the state of affairs there? Because we paid an absolute fortune for those two new power stations, and we haven't done anything since then. So we're still relying on them, and we haven't got plans to build any new ones, do we?
Not from Eskom, no. So Medupi and Kusile are the last of Eskom's new build, and nothing on the plan of the integrated resource plan for electricity, which looks at the next 10 years, is any further new build coming from Eskom besides this Medupi and Kusile. And to make your point, the performance of these plants is very, very far from what it should be. The plants have actually brought Eskom to its very knees. And not only that, impacted massively on the economy of South Africa, not just from cost time overruns, which are expensive indeed, but more from the impact on the economy of load shedding. If those plants had been delivered on time and on budget, we wouldn't have load shedding today. So, for example, Kusile Power Station, running 6-7 years late at the moment, is only half built. And that half that has been built is performing worse than the very worst of Eskom's old coal-fired power stations. So it should be helping to bring up the average energy availability factor, but it's actually bringing it down. So the performance of 50% of the plant is only about 30% of what it should be. So 30% of 50% is about, 15%. And that's what we're getting instead of the design output. And that's not acceptable.
Phumi, I mean, I know this is something we've spoken about so many times. You're probably sick of it too. I know lots of people are sick of it, but we've got to address these things. What do you?
Gareth, your face.
Chris? Yeah, I know. I'm horrified.
Fix your face.
I know.
Well, one of the things, and a couple of days ago, I think there was a statement or at a press conference with Eskom CEO Derrida saying that there's not only is Eskom suffering from all of the issues you're talking about now, Chris, of kind of output and procurement inefficiencies and all of that kind of stuff. He also talked about a skills shortage, which kind of made me sit up and go, wow, okay. So all these many years later, the skills gap hasn't been identified and planned for and covered. And is the skills gap maybe also not in the executive suite?
It is in the executive suite. There is an executive who's responsible for human resources. But to be honest, I hear very, very little from her. Elsie Pule. I never see her at these media briefings, and I don't hear a lot of statements coming from her. We do hear from the CEO and the COO about these human resource issues, and I think it's true to say that morale at Eskom is very, very low, and this is leading to loss of good people, black and white. And I think the skills issue is real. And one of the most concerning issues is that the skills issues that has been raised by the CEO and the COO at Joburg. Now, Joburg is obviously a nuclear power station and has long been a kind of a flagship of Eskom for good performance. And it's currently undergoing what is said to be the most complex upgrade project in the history of Joburg since it was commissioned. And at the same time, the COO, says that he's worried. It keeps him awake at night. The loss of skilled people who are lost to international projects, projects taking place in Egypt, Turkey, in the Middle East, in India. They are poaching good people and leaving Eskom under-resourced at a very critical time during this upgrade.
Sure.
I don't want you to feel like.
What about the private sector?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So, no, sorry. So when you talk about like a skills, sorry, Koketso, talking about a kind of a skills migration, also then, for me, alerts us to possibly a private sector also starting up that is absorbing these skills. Sure, some are leaving the country, but is there some kind of private sector or private, and we hear lots of talk about the IPPs, the independent power producers, and there's been murmurings of a whole lot of those IPPs being signed off and possibly coming on stream soon? Yes, no?
Now look, the kind of skills within Eskom are quite wide-ranging, from very specialized engineering skills through to project management skills, administrative skills, procurement, etc. So I think the people at Eskom are in demand across a wide range of sectors, including the private sector in South Africa, as well as internationally. So you have to be competitive. Your salaries have to be competitive, but it's more than just money. It's also about satisfaction and growth and a feeling of working in an environment that is really positive and moving forward. And unfortunately, the environment at the moment at Eskom, the morale is low. They're coming under a lot of pressure. There was a time when Eskom people were very proud to wear their Eskom windbreaker. Today, you don't want to wear that because
people attack you in the street.
Hostility. There's hostility out there. So
does Andre de Ruyter then know what to do to turn those things around? I mean, he doesn't have a shiny track record in other industries either.
Well, my personal opinion is that he does know what to do, but it's a team effort. Eskom is not one man or one woman. It's 40,000 people. And the real test of leadership is to inspire people to inspire your board, to instill them with confidence, to inspire your executive team, and drive the ethos and the vision and mission of the company through many, many layers of people. And being an executive, like being a leader, is about having a vision, understanding the challenges and threats that are facing you, trying to find those opportunities, and then motivating a team, because it cannot be done by one person. It's
right.
Such a massive project.
So, Koketso, I don't want you to think that we're ignoring you, but I promise you your time is coming, and then Chris is going to feel like he doesn't want to talk about the State of the Nation address and all this kind of thing. So, I mean, do you have any questions relating to energy? Because you, just like all the rest of us, sometimes sit in the dark. You have work to do. It gets in the way of productivity. It ruins, for many people, their opportunity to get things done at home or at work. What kinds of questions do you have for Chris Yelland this morning? Because I've got one other one, but I'll throw it in after you have a go.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe it's to just bring it back home a little bit. The question I have is, if you go to any company, as soon as the best talent leaves, management typically gets involved and say, right, how do we stop the flight of, our best human capital here? In an unfortunate scenario, they tend to leave for the competition. In our case, that would then be leaving to, like you mentioned, Europe, the Middle East, even North Africa, where they are really looking to expand on their energy grid. So in a normal scenario, management steps in and says, right, we need to stop this because the cost around losing your best employees is quite a heavy one. But you really don't see much of that kind of thinking happening at Eskom. So my question is, firstly, what is actually being done about the swaths of engineers who are available, who are in the country, who are actually, to some degree able to help alleviate the problem at the very least? You never hear of it. Instead, there's always one problem compounding into another. Then the second short one, again, is if you go to any company, sort of projects such as Kusile or Midupi actually fail. People are normally, you lose your job, for lack of a better term. You lose your job, you're replaced. Something happens that isn't pleasant for the people or person responsible. In Eskom's case, we like to think about the CEO a lot because the CEO swapped hands quite a few times over the last few years. But who is actually responsible for these massive portfolios, which are a drain on the tax budget, which are a drain on, money that could have been used for other things? So, yeah, that's my other question there.
Damn right. Accountability. So, Chris, you want to have a go at that?
Yeah, look, let's first of all look at the human resource issues. As I say, I agree with you. We don't hear enough about the human resource issues. And we don't hear enough from the executive responsible for HR. There is, of course, a dilemma at Eskom. On the one hand, Eskom itself would acknowledge that they are, in fact, overstaffed. And there are efforts to reduce the staff complement. Of course, their hands are somewhat tied because the president has announced there will be no retrenchments. So they have to rely on voluntary severance packages, as well as natural attrition, and it is having an effect. The numbers are coming down. At the same time, they need more of the right kind of people with specific skills. And so I do hear, and I've been to some media briefings where they have detailed that they are searching for and recruiting key people in the generation sector, which is the sector that is performing so badly at the moment. So something is happening, but I'm sure not enough.
On the question about responsibility and accountability and who has been making these terrible decisions and whether or not they've paid the price?
Yeah, we know that during the years of state capture, things at Eskom were frankly completely out of control. At board level, there were the wrong appointments by a number of ministers, Minister Brown, Minister Kigaba. The wrong people were put in place for the wrong reasons. At board level, at the CEO level, at the executive level. the organization was out of control. Procurement was completely, totally out of control. Coal procurement and all other kinds of procurement.
Yep.
And you have to look at the project management was out of control at Medupi and Kusile. And we know about irregularities at Kusile because they are well publicized and in the public domain. And so this period, and I'm not saying it only started 5 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago during the years of state capture, even before then.
We had load shedding when Alec Irwin was the minister in that portfolio. Do you remember? And everybody says, oh, no, but the Thabo Mbeki administration, everything ran well. They stopped looking after the power plants and they stopped planning forward in advance. And we know that the Guptas made a ton of cash out of mostly the coal side of things. In fact, that's probably where they made the lion's share of their money. But we don't hear about any heads rolling. We see these guys pitching up at the hearings in front of Judge Zondo. But nothing's happened to them. They're probably still living large, nice big pension.
Of course, accountability in South Africa is an area that needs to be addressed. I mean, but let's be fair. Eskom itself is not an investigating authority. It's got a hard enough job doing what it's supposed to do, and that is to provide abundant, low-cost, reliable electricity to business, to industry, to consumers, to farmers, etc. And these kind of investigations are very distracting. Eskom says that they have now placed volumes of evidence before the Special Investigation Unit, before the prosecuting authorities, and really it's their job to take it forward. And we know it's not just at Eskom, but across the board that the prosecuting authorities seem to be overwhelmed, under-resourced, hollowed out, and are just not producing the prosecutions. They're not even bringing them to court, let alone achieving prosecution. So I think the problem there goes well beyond Eskom. There is a new era of accountability at Eskom. I'm sure there's lots more to be done, plenty. But at least there's a new attitude. We've still got to see that drive through the organization and also drive through the prosecuting authorities and then finally the courts.
Well, that's a good segue. It's a good segue because the one thing that part 2 of the Zondo Commission has been almost everybody has concentrated on between Lynn Brown, Minister Kigaba, and Eskom have been a big focus of the second part of the Zondo Commission, because that then has laid out, again, thousands and thousands and thousands of very small parts, where all the moving parts are, who did what when. The investigations were done by the commission, by the commission's investigators. There's lots of evidence sitting out there, but, and this past Sunday again, I saw a little opinion piece coming out of Ms. Shamila Batoy's office, written by Ms. Shamila Batoy, saying, listen, it's going to take a while. So,
TikTok.
While we wait.
May I just add your point? Yes, the volume 1 and volume 2 have been very illuminating. But the big one is volume 3. Volume 3 is going to deal with Eskom. So volume 2 did touch on Minister Brown and Minister Gigaba, but more in their roles at SAA and Denel and Transnet. Eskom is still to come. And I think at the end of this month is going to be very, very revealing as to where the problems were at Eskom itself.
But I think most of us are done with revelations. Most of this information, we've seen it, we've heard it, it's in passing. Some of it has been very clearly laid out in all sorts of investigative journalism reports, all of that kind of stuff. We're done. Okay, we don't need it to be shown to us. We just want somebody in orange overalls. Yeah. We want somebody in orange overalls. We want to see people. We want to see heads roll.
Look, I agree entirely, but I'm sort of an energy guy and electricity guy, and so yes, those are issues facing South Africa as a country that have to be dealt with. But when it comes to Eskom, it's kind of out of its hands once it hands over the evidence to the prosecuting authorities. It's done what it can do, what's within its power to do, and I think There is more to be done, yes, but it is
All
done
right.
quite a lot.
Chris, I'm going to let you go after this because we want to get into Dalimpofu, AfriForum. We want to talk about state capture some more and stuff that's non-related to energy. And I'm very much aware of your time and the fact that you've got a lot of people that you have to give expertise to. But before we go, the amount of money we've spent and wasted, which is exorbitant. We could have built some of the best nuclear energy in the world, and we could have powered up most of this continent if we'd been really thoughtful about this. Nuclear really is the only way that we're going to be able to provide enough energy. If we did solar and we covered the entire Karoo in solar panels, maybe we'd get close. Wind, sure, a little bit of water, but all of that together isn't going to get us near the amount of energy we need, right? So we should have just maybe gone down that path in the very beginning. And of course, people are nervous about nuclear because when they think nuclear, they think Chernobyl and they think 3 Mile Island. But let's be fair, it's the cleanest, safest, and most energy productive way of creating the kind of electricity volumes that we need. We should have just done that. Looking back now with the benefit of hindsight, do you agree with me or not?
No, completely disagree, Gareth. Nuclear ticks some of the boxes, but it has very significant issues. The business case for nuclear is very, very poor. And what we need in South Africa going forward, nuclear will not solve that problem. So let me just try and paint the reality. The reality is that right now we face a shortage of electricity of about 6,000 megawatts.
Okay.
Nuclear, they're only talking about 2,500 megawatts, and they're only talking about it in 2035. There is no solution in the next 15 years, number one. Number two, in the next 15 years, the penetration of variable renewable energy is going to increase in the mix from currently about 6% to about 35% of the mix. Now, that is variable renewable energy. What we need to complement variable renewable energy is not a steady source of power that runs 24 hours a day. What we need is flexible generation that can fill the gaps in the variable renewable energy. 2,500 megawatts of fixed capacity running 24 hours a day does not solve anything of the need to complement 25,000 megawatts of renewable energy, variable renewable energy. What we need is flexible renewable energy. Now, let me just say that why are we getting this massive increase in problematic variable renewable energy? Why? Because it is so cheap. It is coming in now, the latest bid window, at 47 cents a kilowatt hour, which is half the price of coal and about a third to a quarter of the price of new nuclear. So we have to buy as much cheap energy as we can, get our hands on, and we need to deal with the problems that variable renewable energy brings, which is its variability. Right. And the way to deal with that problem is not nuclear and it's not coal, it's gas to power, it's battery storage, and it's other energy storage technologies that are emerging.
Listen, at this point, Chris, I'm gonna bow to your superior knowledge on the subject, but I really just hope someone somewhere is going to start implementing this stuff soon. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in the dark a whole lot more often. It's always good to catch up with you, Chris Yelland, of course, an energy analyst, an electrical engineer, a public speaker, writer, consultant, and the MD at EE Business Intelligence. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning, Chris.
Thank you, Gareth, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. There we go. Chris Yelland. So, Koketso, the stage is yours now. Let's just talk about a few things on your agenda, because a lot of people in the comments are talking about Dalimpofu, and maybe we should start with him because he is the subject of much conversation. I mean, you know, I've got my own feelings about him as a human being, and I like the guy. He obviously, you know, helped me out in my case against Mnet, and we won. And he's a smart man, and he's by no means someone who should be discounted as being an important figure in both politics and the law. But he also is someone who attracts a huge amount of attention. He seems to be all over the place at the moment. People are talking about him at the Judicial Services Commission. They're saying he's defending the guy who set fire to Parliament. They're saying he's defending Jacob Zuma. He seems to be the busiest man in the legal business in South Africa. What are your feelings on whether he might be doing things right, wrong, spreading himself a bit thin, whether or not he's a credible human being anymore, and what kind of stuff you'd like to communicate in terms of what you think of Dali Mpofu?
Well, so yeah, asterisk, I've never met the man, but I honestly believe he is building a cult of personality that is building a cloud around him that says he is a superstar legal expert lawyer who, you know, given the backdrop of him and the EFF, is effectively doing this for Black people. Now, there's people who fall for it. I certainly don't, because at the end of the day, he is securing the bag. Unfortunately, with him being all over the places, the smart thing would be to rather say, let me build a career based on stacks and stacks of me winning in court. Dali isn't making that approach. He wants to be at the forefront of every contentious case, every case that involves some form of social, social discord out there in the public about who's innocent and who's not, particularly with issues regarding race. I don't think it's a good move, because as a legal professional, you'd rather be known for your work and not necessarily the type or the kind of client you typically take on. And it's going to bite him. But I believe he's doing this because he's got grander ambitions in future, maybe to be a Chief Justice or something of that type. I don't know. But yeah, as someone who's not a legal expert, etc., I'll just say that, look, he's all over the place and he's trying to build a cult of personality around himself.
Phumi, you've been in advertising, branding for a long, long time. You know this stuff. Do you think that's I mean, I'm quite impressed by the fact that Koketso sees a long-term plan here. Is that what you think Dali's up to? Do you think he's building this cult of personality so he can capitalize at some point? I mean, he's probably making money in the meantime anyway.
I think Dali is about making money, and no matter what people around Dali might want to tell us, Dali is not a victim here. Okay, so Dali is unfortunately for him, the cases that he takes on and the way in which he takes those cases on, he's not winning in terms of making himself this kind of called Dali Mpofu. If you're in trouble, call Dali Mpofu, but the kind of people who do call on Dali Mpofu and the people whose calls he does answer, are a particular type of person. Somebody said in the comments here that he seems to be kind of like Zuma cronies. That's who he's answering for.
Back I'm against just saying, the wall.
You know what? And unfortunately, when you listen to him argue, the cases that he argues, his arguments are flimsy. So he doesn't make a case for himself. If he is trying to build a cult of personality around himself and the cases he takes on, he better start winning some. He's doing more. He's doing more in getting people's cases thrown out, and then he has gotten people off. So I feel sorry for Mafu. Is it Mafu, the guy with the parliamentary fire? Mafe. I feel sorry for him, because I'm kind of going, is Dali the person that you want in your corner? Because he doesn't seem to, he tends to take on cases and then say, oh, it's a racial matter. Everything for him is so superficial. So I don't know if he's building towards becoming a Chief Justice. He may get there if certain people's political careers go in a particular way. But on his own merits, I don't think he's going to do it. And this kind of casting him. So I do just want to say, and this kind of casting him now with all of the hoo-ha around him and how he behaved at the JSE, at the interviews, of casting him as some kind of, again, victim, is just reprehensible. Dali was awful. So a lot of people are talking about the kind of the insinuation around Dunstan Mlambo and the unproven rumors of sexual misconduct. Lots of people are talking about that. And very few people are talking about the fact that Dali basically said to Judge Maya, insinuated that he and Judge Maya had spent the night together on some, and it's like, that's so disgusting, so slimy. That is tantamount to sexual harassment too.
It is, absolutely. And the fact that he's doing that just because she is a woman is even more outrageous, because he's the one who kept saying, no, we need to have women represented and all of this stuff. It's a personal issue which he's brought out into the public, and I think she should sue him for it, frankly.
Personal issue? It's not even a personal issue. It's a non-thing.
Don't you
what
think
if she should? It's irrelevant in that context.
Absolutely.
Of just, he worked for her, and they had, like, with one other person, and overnight kind of preparing for, and so he's just like,
but he's clearly trying to undermine, and to make her seem foolish. And if that isn't a classic misogynistic move, I don't know what is. So anyway, I do want to move on from him, because I know you guys are so excited about the State of the Nation address today. You're so excited to hear from our Chief Executive Officer of the country, the President, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa. So what are we expecting? Because I saw headlines in some of the news outlets, not surprisingly the ones that love Cyril, the ones who were praying for Cyril in 2020. They're all saying, it's great expectations ahead of SONA 2022. I'm less enthusiastic. Am I in good company this morning or not?
Look, I think I'm nervous more than anything about what's going to happen later tonight.
Why?
So this particular State of the Nation, maybe there's something to be said in that Cyril has to do the unfortunate thing of delivering a State of the Nation not in the National Assembly, because that's actually gone up in flames. So it's not a good look, firstly, and he has to say something just around that, just so he can effectively cover himself for the future. But I'm nervous because I'm afraid that he might just turn this entire debacle into post-COVID recovery, etc., etc. And the unfortunate thing is, post-COVID recovery, at least in Cyril's mind, involves some form of broad-based Black economic empowerment for the nation at whole, etc. And as someone who is the second biggest beneficiary of BEE, of course, that's all he knows. And unfortunately for the clear masses, BEE isn't really working. So I'm just afraid that he's going to shove BEE fixing the economy, etc., down our throats. And that's really not what you want to do to get things back on track. What about all the other non-BEE compliant businesses that have been affected by the lockdown? So I'm afraid he's going to do that. There's also talk that, our taxes might actually go up as well, which again is a terrible idea. The middle class has significantly dwindled during the pandemic. And the last thing you want to do is actually then come out and say that, right, thank you, middle class. The few of you who actually remain in the country, A, and still have a job, B, we are going to siphon additional funds out of your payslip because, hey, we need to recover, right? There's no benevolence in any of that, unfortunately. It's the same hymn book that Cyril himself particularly is well versed in singing out of, and really that's what makes me nervous. This is not how you put a country back on track. Ideally, what he should have been doing was making life a little bit easier so that people can recover of their own accord. Get your skills out there in the marketplace and actually do something you're good at, which in turn will not just feed you and your family, but will help build the country. That's not going to happen. I'm afraid Cyril's going to use the entire SONA as a means to say this is how we're going to rebuild the country. And if you're not Black, then you're not invited to the table.
What do you have to say, Phumi? I mean, are you looking forward to the State of the Nation address? You're such a big Cyril fan.
So, the job of the State of the Nation address is supposed to lay out for the rest of us what the plans of Cyril and his cabinet are for the coming year. They're supposed to set the tempo of the things that are important and the things that they will be concentrating on and the things that they will be working towards. And what we've seen in the past with Cyril is a lot of pie in the sky. So, Cyril first came out with his Tumamina.
And smart
which
cities.
sounded.
Don't forget smart cities, you know. That
Which sounded so like, this guy is, and very at the time, sort of kind of setting a tone that says, this is a person who's going to do something. So Tumamina, as everybody now knows, means send me, right? And he was kind of standing up and saying, I'm going to get the job done. A year later, we were all like, whoa, really? But the year later was also in the lockdowns. And at the beginning of the epidemic, we saw him come out and be very strong and kind of looking at everything else that was happening in the world. And we thought, okay, he's going to take control. He's going to use this opportunity. He's going to clean up.
Nothing.
Instead, what we saw was PPE scandals, right? And we saw money being stolen in unprecedented kind of amounts. And Cyril's done nothing about it. He's done nothing about it except come out and say, this won't stand. This won't, he started out by saying, this won't happen. And then it happened. And then he came out and he said, this won't stand. Something will be done about it. And we're still waiting for something to be done about it. So, and then smart cities, all pie in the sky. And we're kind of going, yeah, can you just get the electricity running? So we're going to have more of that. We're going to have more of Cyril's kind of pie in the sky. This is what we are. But we're not going to have concrete things out of Cyril. We're not going to get anything concrete out of him. We're not going to get any concrete commitments out of him. We're not going to get any concrete feedback from him that says, in the past year, this is what we've done and this is what we've gotten right. And we're not going to get that from him.
Well,
unfortunately.
He's got very little to boast about, actually. And in the light of all the state capture stuff that's going on, which we mustn't forget happened while he was number 2 in the government. Again, everybody seems to just conveniently forget the fact that while all of this was going down, he was sitting there watching it, and claims that he was shocked by everything when it was eventually revealed.
And we're going to get more of the mainstream media's credibility stripped away from them because they're going to treat him with kid gloves. We're going to come out of it, and their post-analysis is going to be softly, all nice about him. So we're getting more erosion of kind of the trust that we have in that third estate. But and as you know, I remain hopeful that the country, the people within us are beginning, the veil has fallen, right? So the people have begun to see what isn't working with Cyril and his party. People are now quite aware of the fact that it's not Cyril is unable to turn the ANC around and get rid of the rotten apples in the ANC. People can now see that it's the ANC that is the problem. It's everybody that is the problem.
Ironically, their idea of collective responsibility has come full circle, and now they will end up paying the price collectively. I mean, it can't happen too soon, if you ask me. We thought the last election would be a lot more decisive, but every day, less and less of the power that they once had, and they'll never get it back. It's a one-way street, and it's all heading downhill for them. So let's just look at one other thing, because we are kind of running short on time, and there's a lot that I want to talk about with Koketso this morning. But Koketso, one of the big stories of this week is that AfriForum decided to take Mbuyiseni Ndlozi to court, and they also said that Julius and many people in the EFF have been romanticizing the idea of killing Boers. There's also the question of whether or not a direct threat was made by Mbuyiseni when he tweeted something the other day about, we'll show you with guns and bombs and all kinds of things. What do you think's really going on there? And is the media again just glomming on to a race story because it gets attention, it's clickbait? Or is there something real going on here that needs a bit of our attention this morning?
Look, I don't think any threat to life should be taken lightly, whether it's put in a song or it's actually, hearsay in a conversation, that sort of thing. And That's exactly what the EFF, Mbuyiseni, Julius, etc. That's exactly what they did when they go around chanting the song. You know, it's not a nice song. It's not a good song, and it's in effect saying that these people or certain class of people are not deserving of life, and that's something that has to be taken seriously. In an ideal world, you would have loved to see the South African Human Rights Commission step in. They're a Chapter 9 institution, of course, but they seem to be very selective in terms of cases they take on. They were very quick to jump on the Clicks shampoo bandwagon, of course, but when the EFF sings "Kill the Boer," they are nowhere to be found. Instead, they even made a statement basically saying that no, they do not classify that as hate speech because, you know, there is freedom of speech within political circles. So ideally, it should have actually gone to the SAHRC, started there and then stopped there, slapped the EFF with a fine, told them not to do it again. Instead, they didn't do that, and hence AfriForum have then decided to take this thing to court. The worst part about this whole thing is people actually don't want to look at the case on its own merit. You know, they just see it as EFF equal, therefore they're racist, versus AfriForum, therefore they're racist. And then they literally see it as a black versus white thing. And I don't believe that's how we should actually approach these things. You know, look at the case on its own merit and look at what is actually being fought over in court, and that is a hate speech line item in a song, which we know they do tend to cause harm. I mean, look what happened in Senegal it feels like just a year ago, but it's effectively almost a year and a half ago now, where songs were sang that basically incited people to go out into the field and cause property damage and steal from the farm, etc. And that's exactly what happened. So there is a case to be made that when you say "kill the Boer," you are in effect saying that I am empowering you to actually take the life of someone who happens to be Afrikaans, who happens to be a farmer. And that is a direct threat on their life, which should be taken seriously. So I really do hope that the EFF do learn their lesson from this. I hope they get slapped with yet another cost order with this whole thing as well, because I believe we need to set a precedent that in our project to build the country, which is taking longer than it should, by the way, we really shouldn't be going backwards.
Like Medupi, right?
Yeah, like Kosile and Midupi, we really shouldn't be doing things like this if we really want to, advocate for human rights at a basic level and nation building at a secondary level after that.
And the demonstration outside that court by EFF supporters is not going to help their case. But the EFF don't learn. The EFF don't learn from these experiences. I mean, the EFF currently are the single biggest institutional donor to AfriForum because of the number of cost orders that they've had to pay.
That's a hell of a way to look at it.
But they are. I mean, they have had to pay AfriForum. I think this is the third time that they're going after them for a cost order, and they've lost the other two, by the way. So they are the single biggest institutional donor to AfriForum. So they don't learn.
So in their hate, they're actually funding the people they have disdain for.
Yeah, that seems to me like a fair way for us to balance out the things that they say. You look at what the things are that they have to do. All right, so guys, it's maybe worth just referring very briefly to some of the things that are going on internationally. We haven't spoken about Ukraine and Russia at all. Do either of you have any peculiar insights to this? Do you have any analysis you want to share on Russia, on Ukraine? Because it's bubbling there in the background, but no one's pressing any actual buttons to make things go. Do you think this is going to be World War III, or do you think it's going to be a damp squib?
So normally what happens is if people credibly feel threatened, they tend to flee their country. Long before tanks actually roll in, as a man, you might just decide, let me take my family and let's move to greener pastures. Let me ensure the safety of my loved ones and my offspring, etc. And mothers will do the same, even if it means leaving your husband behind. We see this in parts of the Middle East where, women risk it all effectively to leave. Yes. You don't see this happening with Ukrainians. They are not fleeing the country en masse. They are not looking to emigrate immediately. And that, for me, tells me that they don't take this thing as serious as some of the Western media would like us to believe. Now, there is something to be said in that every time a sitting US president is under extreme pressure, part of the list of options here to really rescue their presidency, especially if they're still in their first term, which Biden is in. Part of this is to say, okay, hang on a minute, the situation is bad. We need to go to war. By going to war, what that then does is it kicks off that military-industrial complex into high gear. People are then employed. Money starts flowing from the government into people's hands, and therefore people are then happy with the presidency because it means that you get to put food on the table, buy 2.5 cars, and build the picket fence.
The wag the dog theory. So you reckon that this is a knee-jerk response or a calculated response from the Biden regime because they are plunging into new depths on their polling at the moment. And also, if you notice in America that the blue states and the cities that have been the most masked, the most vaccine strong, all the rest of it, are suddenly pulling back and changing direction as they realize that they're out of step with the ordinary American who's sick to death of COVID. They're all starting to change just because they know the midterm elections are coming up. You really think it's that cynical, Koketso?
So I don't think that Biden will do that, though. I think that the American population is a little bit wary of war, and the way in which they left that Afghanistan kind of makes it difficult for them at this point. It's to make it a popular decision, which is what the Vlad is counting on, right? That's why he keeps pressing that button. There's a very interesting, and it's a photo essay on New York Times. Yesterday, I think they put it up. You talk about what is happening in the Ukraine. And looking at those images, it reminded me very much of what we see in Zimbabwe, where people are still living there. So we here in South Africa have this particular view, and that's what's happening in the Ukraine too. There is a particular view of what's happening in the Ukraine, but when you see the bombed houses from where there has been active engagement between the fighting forces, when you see those bombed houses, when you see the barbed wire, separating Russia and the Ukraine. And then at the very same time, kind of look further afield from where there is no active fighting, and you see the ordinary person trying to get to their job in some chemical plant. Or there's a very touching image actually of a lady walking past, and there's kind of a half-bombed building, and she's got her little groceries walking past, and graffiti on the wall. Then it's a very tense situation that's happening there. I also watch a lot of RT. I still watch lots of Russian media. It's a very tense situation, but you can see the game that's being played out there with people's lives. It's a game being played out with people's lives, and it's horrendous, to say the least, for me. So Putin is pushing his luck, but he knows that America on the other side is weak. Joe Biden is going to be reluctant to get into this war because the American people don't have a taste for it because of what happened to them in Afghanistan. So and now he's brought China to his side,
I don't think actually that your analysis, either of them are mutually exclusive, because I do think Phumi's just looking at it from the Russian point of view, and you're looking at it from the American point of view, Koketso. But it could work out well for both. Putin could get to take the Ukraine on as a vassal state, and Biden could distract people long enough from his own domestic failure and his failure in Afghanistan to be able to ratchet up a few popularity points at the polls. But either way, the Democrats are pretty screwed in the US at the moment. And it seems like all the stuff they were really banking on, the only one that still works for them is, ironically, racism. And they pull this out every time they need something to save them. They're now using it against Joe Rogan, of all people. Do you have any thoughts on that, since you run your own podcast and we're talking about the world's biggest podcaster, Koketso?
Yeah, I think Rogan he's a soft target, really. A very notable distraction, if anything. There's this thought that goes out that perhaps Spotify has made Joe Rogan big, where that's not the case. Joe Rogan actually built himself up as a podcaster long before he got a lovely paycheck from Spotify. But I think he's a soft target in that no one can really claim him on the political spectrum, that is. And, as we know with much of the left, if you're not part of them, then you are an automatic enemy. And we've seen them do this to Rogan and others before. So I think he's a soft target. At the end of the day, it's textbook cancellation, really. And I don't think it's really going to work because he's got too many friends now. And, as you've seen, even when people try to cancel you, Gareth, it'll die down, it'll just fade with the news cycle. And at the end of the day, you'll still carry on.
What do you both think of the fact that he apologized? I mean, we know in America, the N word is like a magic word, right? It has superpowers. Some people believe that there is something about that word that just imbues it with the properties like, Harry Potter might have, where he casts a spell. And what they've done is they've gone and cut a whole lot of clips of where either he was discussing the lyrics of a rap song, or he was quoting someone else, or he was talking about comedy and whether or not the N-word should be used in comedy. These are things that happened 9 years ago. And he apologized. He said, look, I genuinely feel if I've hurt someone that I should apologize, which I think is something he probably didn't have to do. The fact that he did do it shows that he's got, at least he's a good faith interlocutor in this case. But do you guys feel he had to apologize? Do you think that this is just America banging on the same old drum, or do you think that there is something about this that makes it extra sinister?
Well, so you go first.
Yeah, I think he shouldn't have apologized. He should have rather stood firm and said, right, this is not my belief, and I said what I said, and let's move on. I will do better. I would have apologized by saying something along those lines. But I mean, with that said, at the end of the day, if you can't forgive someone who's genuinely asking for forgiveness, which is what the mob isn't willing to do, they want him cancelled. They're not willing to take his apology and say, right, we hear you. If you're unwilling to actually forgive someone who's come out and said sorry, then it says a lot more about you than about them. And at the end of the day, I think cooler heads will prevail. And Joe Rogan must just keep a cool head. Don't do anything stupid. And the same goes for Spotify as well.
Phums, what do you say?
The thing about being in business, whatever business you're in, you always make decisions based on what's best for your bottom line. And I think Joe made a decision based on what's best for his bottom line. So making the apology, whether sincere or not, is a good move for the business that he is running, because it keeps him everybody's talking about him. It keeps him top of mind. It gets people to go back and listen to some of those podcasts. And that's what it's still show business. He is still in the business of show. And that's what this is all about. So it just keeps the dollars raking in, and he's made the right business decision, whether he believes it or not. And this being provocative works in America. And that's who Joe is. Being provocative works in America.
Maybe Joe is in a unique position because he can't really be cancelled. But for many people, the accusation of racism is a death knell. And, it's kind of like if you're a guy and you get accused of rape, even if it's not true, that it's been said is enough to ruin you sometimes. And I think the cost of real racism is still quite high. I mean, and it should be in some cases, but in other cases, it sometimes seems to me like it's the last stop when you can't get rid of someone with all the other stuff that you haven't got on them.
Unfortunately, I am a major cynic with the motivators of American culture. And one of the biggest motivators in American culture is making money, right? So we over here, far away, may see or hear a particular thing that then makes a blip. But then it dies down and we forget about it. What we never see on the aftermath of it is we never see the little tours that they go to. America is a big, big place. It is a big, big market. So for us over here, we might, Spotify might say, oh, we're going to take this person off our platform and we're not going to pay them this and this. What you don't see is you don't see the hundreds of little towns that they get to go on a tour on and still bring in and rake in their dollars as they then charge whatever, $20 at the door for people to come in. There are millions and millions and millions of Americans who believe in all sorts of different things that may be reprehensible to the rest of us over here, far away. And we may never hear of those people again. But that doesn't mean that those people's lives have stopped.
You get the last word, Koketso.
Yeah, I think Phumi has, she's actually hit it right there, that it is a big place. But I like what you said, Gareth, and that, when all else fails, just throw in the accusation of racism. It seems to be the silver bullet that kills everyone who's deemed to be a vampire of some sort. But yeah, I think people do need to be mature over this. Just because you said something doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. Everything has to be in context. I mean, how do you educate people about the N-word if you don't, or if you're not willing to say what the N-word actually is, for example? But yeah, I think props to Joe Rogan, though, for building up what he has built up. At the end of the day, when all of this dies down and everything fades away, Rogan will still be there. His podcast will still be there. It will still be the biggest in the world. And the only real change that's going to happen is he might be a little bit more careful about what he says in future. But yeah, he's still uncancelable. And at the end of the day, just leave him be and find something else to be angry about, or go find some other celebrity to accuse of racism, I guess.
Well, they've tried to cancel us, different groups of people at some point, and the burning platform continues. And we're glad to have opinions like yours here as well. Thank you very much, Koketso. Big thank you to Chris Yelland, who was on a little bit earlier on, and most especially to you for joining us. Phumi, my partner in crime on the burning platform. We will see you next week. Magic. We'll see you tomorrow morning for another episode of this show. Don't miss it. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., bright and early. Make sure you're awake.